I wanted to just introduce Earl with a beautiful quote that came to us from, I think very appropriately, Jackie Shelton Green, who happens to be right now the Poet Laureate for North Carolina. So since this is really a North Carolina story in many ways, there's a lovely, I think, flowering of poetry, especially from Black writers in North Carolina right now, that Earl and Jackie share a community that they are part of. Jackie writes, "A boy named Boy becomes a polished lens for reckoning with contrasting forms of being and being watched at the intersection of black and white, fish and snakes, rural and city, poor and more poor, public and private. Barefaced, undisguised, a boy named Boy names what it means to live out loud, Black, shamelessly declaring restorative witness as an act of resistance and the unflinching utterance of endurance. This memoir of race and survival croons and scrutinizes a sultry but sharp Southern manner of existence that both claims and repels." And I will leave it at that. It certainly does not repel me. Jackie meant that in a way of bringing up the difficulties, I think. Anyway, without further ado, I would like to introduce Earl Braggs. Voila.
Hello. I'm going to start by reading a list of things, notes I want you to remember. I grew up in a small fishing community in Hampstead, North Carolina. I called it White Town. My 4 brothers and I were the only Black kids in the neighborhood. Unlike busing up in Boston at the time, we were bused out of White Town to a Black elementary school. When integration came, we were then allowed to attend our White Town/hometown school. During the school's opening days of my freshman year, I was voted the ugliest boy on the school bus. I was the only Black student on the bus. The white bus driver, a one-man Supreme Court, upheld the vote and the verdict. Towards the end of my sophomore year, a white boy elbowed me in the head during basketball practice. I turned into Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali that day. All hell broke loose. Pent-up frustrations on both sides erupted into a race riot. I was charged with inciting a riot. I was expelled from the Pender County school system forever. I left White Town, headed for San Francisco, only to end up hitchhiking to the next town, Wilmington, North Carolina. 26 hard and soft years later, I stepped down upon the streets of San Francisco. A boy named Boy. People have long told long stories like my story, but most never quite as long. Picture this: a colored grandmother and 5 colored grandsons sitting on the back porch of a little shack situated off-center in the middle of White Town, listening to the afternoon transistor radio, November the 22nd, 1963, the day John Kennedy died. Like so many colored people back then, we were not afraid to cry at funerals. John F. Kennedy had been our hope, and our hope had died that afternoon in Texas. Later that day, into the woods I remember going, sitting on a tree stump, solitude surrounded by solitude. I wandered as far away as why starfish disappear at night when stars come out. I wondered if starfish would disappear if stars one night decided not to shine. Sitting there, still as some kind of morning that waits for tears to form, I waited for the world with no more Camelot to start turning again. I pressed my ears up against the blue wind of questions that tried to answer themselves but couldn't. Echoes rang out as church service bells. I was not alone. Siddhartha had always followed me everywhere I went. Listening to the patience of trees is a virtue. We were trash pile children, coming of age in a white trash town, in a fish town. Some of the community called my brothers and me amusement at the Pender County 4-H Club Fair Boys. Many Saturday nights, we were defined by design as nothing more than shooting gallery arcade people. 2 niggers for a nickel, step right up, try your luck. We were moving targets that knew which way not to move. The art of figuring out trajectory is a Negro natural science. Every day was as normal as any other day. Mosquito protections we never needed, we never wore. Bitten by mosquitoes, we seldom were. We knew how to dance around the killing sounds of mosquito songs. The bookmobile came to our town because we lived in Whitetown. The bookmobile came to our town because we lived in Whitetown. A white lady that drove the bookmobile always came on time. She taught me how to read O. Henry long before the Pender County Public School and the public library considered Negroes to be public enough to check out library books. I think I was 9 years old when a drunk white man put a gun to my head so he could watch himself laugh at me, shaking. Every day we stared into our own darkness. Hampstead, North Carolina back then was a no stoplight crossroad town. There were 2 fish houses. For years, without any loose pocket change, we lived in Hampstead between 3 Jesuses and the smell of 2 fish houses. The 3 Jesuses were Baptist, Methodist, and Presbyterian. The 3 Jesuses all looked the same, but from the outside looking in, we knew exactly how to tell one from the other 2. Growing up African American, colored, Negro, nigger boy, black, and broke, as in no money whatsoever, in a white people town during the 1960s, one would think that I did not have a happy childhood. But Black children, I believe, are born with an innate sense and a need to make a shirt fit that doesn't fit and make it fit like it was made to fit. The only thing solid we had to stand upon were Black people's magic, colored people's love, and the Negro way of singing a spiritual song. We improved on life like the edge of a sharp but dull kitchen butter knife. I loved the bookmobile lady, and she loved me. White kids waiting for the bookmobile story to be told were envious of me, not because I was a colored boy standing in the do not stand here spot next to the driver's seat, but because she was pretty, like a Look magazine picture of Elizabeth Taylor. We were trash pile children, salt life kids. We worshiped the movement and the sounds of water surfing in from the sea. We honored the coming in and the going out of tide levels. We were salt life kids, happy to be up to our knees in salt marsh, gigging for flat-faced flounders big enough for supper. One time, the Pender County Welfare Department tried to give us some welfare food, a whole chicken in a can. We used that whole chicken in a can for target practice. We would shoot it full of holes until the chicken juice spilled out, and then we would open a can and feed it to the welfare dog that we had. We had no bank account. We had no money under the mattress. There was no barbershop quartet that would sing around our heads. We grew afros, beautiful uncombed afros, nappy like undreaded locks. Yes, and yes again, we were happy by definitions invented. We were happy because we loved Mr. Reuben, the Jewish traveling shoe salesman. He never failed to knock on our door unannounced to check the wear and the tear of our shoes. We never had enough food in our kitchen, but we never went anywhere hungry. The Lord will always make a way, my grandmother used to say. And then there was the day the gypsies came to get me. I was 4, maybe I was 5, when they came to kidnap me. I saw the green car coming before the green car pulled in, but Gypsy Rose Lee saw me before I saw her staring out from the most beautiful and hypnotizing eyes I think I've ever seen. Gypsy Rose Lee called as clear as my name. Come here, son. Come to mama, my dear beautiful one. Come here, son. I reached for the gypsy lady's hand as the wind spoke. My grandmother, alerted voice, no. Off the edge of a cliff, I almost stepped. Where would I be now if? When the United States government finally granted me the right to attend my hometown, Whitetown High School, I ironed and pressed my best clothes and went. 2 days less than 2 years later found me diagramming the composition of my last Topsail High School English class sentence. He hit me first. It was a warm day for the season, early March. The tallest player on the team, a white boy whom I did not name and I will not name, drilled me with a deliberate elbow in the back of my head. I responded like Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, right jab, left uppercut, lights out, TKO. I don't know what happened next. All I know is pent-up frustration released like an explosion in a package that had been waiting forever to be delivered. I was the postman, I guess. The ugliest boy on the school bus was kicked out of the Pender County school system forever for inciting a riot that he did not invent. As a kid, I don't recall ever wanting to go to college. I just wanted to be wise and wander the roads of America like Jack Kerouac. So yes, I never intended to go to college, but after 4 years and 9 months in the Air Force, that mistake granted me the GI Bill. Maybe that was it. I don't know. I believe in magic and logic about as much as magic and logic believes in me. So in 1995, I was awarded a summer fellowship from the university where I now teach. My project proposal was to travel across the country and write a novel. The working title was Looking for Jack Kerouac. With a copy of On the Road tucked in my cargo pants pocket, I walked out, left the stove on, hoping the house would burn down. Just kidding. And went out the door. I was on the road again, like Willie Nelson, pot pipe in my other cargo pants pocket. I left home singing a Motown music song. In my Paisley book, I wrote what I saw, what I smelled, what I heard. Someone said to me once, there are no conclusions to be made. All conclusions have already been made. I don't know if I believe that or not. But so, as I said, after a 26-year road trip, I arrived in San Francisco with a head full of fog. After learning a lesson of not buying 2 California burritos for a mid-afternoon lunch, I made it to a bookstore that Fromm had drawn on a map. Some bookstores are more literary than others. This was the top of the line. The bookstore owner was a man without directions, scattered like loose pages and wind. Yet, he seemed to pay attention and not pay attention at the same time. So when he told me he had 2 poets scheduled to come in from London the next Friday for a night reading, and that he would put me on the Friday night bill, I had to believe my ears and not believe my ears all at the same time. Come Friday, sure enough, my name was on the Friday night 7 p.m. playbill. My name, Hudson Rivers. After the reading, I took a bus back to my Mission District rent by the week room. There, sitting in a Paisley chair, reading pages I'd written in my Paisley book. The dim motel room light reminded me of the dim kerosene lamp that I read translations of Pushkin. I thought about drifting back and forth in my Hampstead years across center field, robbing white boys of home runs. I thought about stealing second base. I thought about stealing home plate the way Jackie Robinson used to. I thought about my dead brother Lee, face beneath a pale Hampstead moon. Later that evening, we were supposed to go night fishing. I thought about my grandmother watching me clean fish. I thought about our little shack house and the front yard grass that refused to grow for colored people. I thought about Gypsy Rose Lee. I thought about my father's white teeth gleaming when I told him I was going into the Air Force. I remember what he said 2 months before he died. He said, "Now you can fly, son." Yes, there in that paisley-colored armchair, I thought about my teachers that I still loved. I thought about Mr. McGee, Miss Ann Snyder, and Mrs. Hart, and how each took turns drawing directions for me to follow. I thought about catching Venus flytraps. I thought about the schoolhouse that expelled me for life because I would not sit down and be quiet as I was told to do. And I thought about the 3 Jesuses. I thought about my cousin, Preston Lee. Lord knows that boy could sing. I thought about my great-grandmother, Hattie Brown Nixon, who lived to be almost 100 years old. I thought about the fish fry after her funeral. Thought about the picture of me she kept on the fireplace mantel. Yes, there in that paisley-colored chair, sitting beneath the dim light, I thought about the contrast of black and white, the contrast of city life and country life. Nicknaming, according to Invisible Man author Ralph Ellison, is the black art of escape. I asked myself, sitting there in that paisley chair, I asked myself, am I an escapee? Did I get out of White Town? Or still am I just a little dark complected boy named Boy catching fish in Venus flytraps? I thought about the train seat people and the train stop people getting away from somewhere, going somewhere, or anywhere or nowhere. I thought about the paths my tracks led me. Maybe those gypsies did kidnap me after all, and it's just that I don't quite remember quite how long Gypsy Lee's fingers really were. She said, "Come here, son." How else is it that I ended up as gypsy as any one of those gypsies? Maybe it was the goat man. He had two black and white goats, and they stared at me, and they knew from the beginning that remembered numbers never add up. It's hard to influence the insights of Paisley persuasion. "Come here, son," she said. I thought about people I met along the way, people like the salt shaking man sitting at the table in the cafe in Salt Lake City, pouring salt shaker down his throat, telling me Jack Kerouac didn't live around there as far as he could tell. I thought about a pair of yellow tight shorts, a street artist outside of the train station in Philadelphia, drawing pictures of tourists, $1 each. She drew a cartoon picture of me. I gave her $5 because her shorts were so tight and so yellow. I thought about the Amish people I met on the train between Philadelphia and Chicago, but did not meet on the train between Philadelphia and Chicago because they did not make eye contact. I thought about Junior Boy, a pretend to be homeless black man. He told me he sleeps in parks during the day because he can't sleep at home at night. He woke up when he saw me coming, asked me for a cigarette. I told him I didn't have any, didn't smoke, and then he asked me for a light. "People call me Junior Boy," he said. I told him I was looking for Jack Kerouac. I told him Kerouac was dead. Stunned, scattered, that I was looking for a dead man. "Dead seriously," he said. "You ain't never gonna find that nigga." Deep into the deepest part of the evening, deep in the seat of that Paisley chair, I thought of twice about Spencer and Fromm, each cartographers in their own map-making way. I thought about Allison and me holding hands, running through the streets of Chicago, jumping puddles like teenagers in love, trying to make it to the bus stop before bus 29 decided to pull away. Winded, breathing one breath, we fell into the last seat of a damn near empty bus 29. Allison took both my hands into hers and said, "You know what, Hudson?" "What?" I said. "You know," she smiled her lipstick look, "maybe you're not looking for Jack Kerouac. Maybe Jack Kerouac is looking for you." I don't know how many moments passed when the beautiful voice that I had fallen madly in love with started to sing the lyrics from a Stevie Nicks song. "When the rain washes you clean, you'll know." I woke up the next morning, still sitting in that paisley-colored chair, Stevie Nicks still dancing like a witch at the Red Rock in my dreadlocks. My train of thought had raced on by, only to stop and start red as unsmeared red lipstick. A cold shower, a cold California burrito for breakfast. I packed my Jack Kerouac backpack, checked out of my rented room, and walked to a familiar place where overcrowded buses still stop for strangers. I thought about all the buses of my childhood years. I lined them all up in my mind, and one by one, I pulled a cord telling each driver, "This is where I get off." The airport was Sunday morning crowded. I guess people like flying on the holiest day of the week. My Jack Kerouac backpack was heavy with thought and felt so light when I put it on the checked baggage scale. My boarding pass promised me a window seat. The Golden Gate Bridge is really orange, but in a certain piss-colored light, it appears golden. So I arrived in San Francisco on a train, and I left San Francisco on a jet airplane. No more nights on the train for me. No, I did not leave my heart in San Francisco, but San Francisco left its heart in me. Like a Tennessee Williams play, Tom looking for a piece of blue glass, menagerie. No, I did not go to the moon. I went much further. Thank you.